Hi, and welcome to the Restorative Wellness Clinicians Corner, a video series exclusively for functional health professionals, where we interview the top experts in the latest research, products, tools, and best practices for getting your clients exceptional results. So welcome everybody to today's episode of the RWS Clinicians Corner. I'm super excited for today's guest. We have Chris Burres, published author, host of the Uncovering the Secrets to Longevity Health Summit. He's a podcast host and patent holder with a surprising twist. He is not just a visionary scientist, but also a master of comedy improv. Chris is the founder and chief scientist at MyVitalC, where he manufactures a Nobel Prize-winning molecule responsible for the single longest longevity experimental result in history, a full 90% extension of life. And yes, that will be one of my first questions. He is the intersection where science meets laughter, and his life's mission is to help people live longer, healthier, happier, pain-free lives with science. Chris, welcome.
Margaret, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad we got to connect again. You are so busy. I am so busy. I did actually get to hang out with your husband last weekend? Was it 2 weekends?
I know.
Recently.
You guys get to have all the fun. I never get to go to the fun biohacking events. It's all the photos. It's awesome. So I want to start from the beginning. I want you to tell us the story of ESS60. And I definitely want to hear. I mean, those are some bold claims we got here. So I want you to tell us like the story. What is it? How did you come across it? What got you interested in this little molecule, this little powerful molecule?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of the best place to start. So I can share, like, probably about 8 years ago, if you had said I was going to be in the health space and that I was going to be hanging out with cool people like your husband and you on webinars, I probably would have just said, no, I don't see how that's going to happen, because I was a happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientist, and I woke up every day and I made carbon nanomaterials and I sold them to research institutions around the world. And then one particular study, the one where the test subjects, in this case it was Wistar rats, lived 90% longer than the control group, totally changed my trajectory. So I'll start at the beginning. For me, is this molecule, right? So if you're watching, I'm holding up a model of a molecule. If you just happen to be listening, imagine a soccer ball where the lines on the soccer ball represent the bonds between the carbon atoms. So you have a spherical molecule of 60 carbon atoms. The molecule was discovered in 1985 here in Houston at Rice University. That's where we're based, in Houston. And the three scientists who discovered it won the Nobel Prize for the discovery in 1996. So a short 11 years from being discovered to being awarded the Nobel Prize. My company, my business partner and I, started manufacturing the molecule in 1991, a full 5 years before they won the Nobel Prize. So we're heavily involved in this industry from the very beginning. We're lucky to be in Houston, and that kind of puts it all together. I did write a book actually called Live Longer and Better, and it talks about how my business partner and I started the company, how it was discovered, the molecule was discovered, that the scientists won the Nobel Prize. Kind of interesting teaser. The three guys who won the Nobel Prize were missing one person who was the actual person who stuck carbon in the machine and actually discovered the molecule. So that's an interesting teaser for going to pick up the book.
All the best things in science happen by accident, right? Like, isn't it? There's so many examples of this. A little whoopsies and like, oh wow, look at what we just found.
Well, and it also goes to this. I'm sure your audience is, as scientists, we're kind of taught, and I think as people, we're kind of taught, hey, anecdotes don't matter. In fact, you should ignore them altogether. But that's where science starts. It always starts there, right? Like if you go back to, the Petri dish with mold and bacteria, and the bacteria wasn't growing next to the mold because, in fact, penicillin was there, that's just an anecdotal observation that you carry through the scientific process to move forward. And so we're certainly in a situation where me as a scientist, I've got anecdotes, and then I've got theories, and so I kind of internally have to juggle that balance of where it sits. So the reason the scientists won the Nobel Prize is because this molecule is amazing. I mean, one, it's the first closed cage molecule, right? Every other molecule before this had dangling ends, and there were things that could be bonded with it. This one, every atom inside of the molecule is connected with another atom inside of the molecule. So it's pretty amazing. That's part of the reason they won the Nobel Prize. The other is the molecule performs as well or better than the current best material in almost every application. So it makes better inks, better batteries, better tires, better photocells. And that's when people are often like, wait a minute, we're on Clinician's Corner. That doesn't sound healthy. Like, I didn't wake up this morning, look at my car and think, what components of my car battery or solar cells, if I have them, should I be consuming on a daily basis? And that's fun, interesting, and the story actually gets a little bit worse first. So one of the shapes on the exterior of this ESS60 molecule looks like benzene, like it's the same shape as benzene. Now, benzene is ubiquitous in our society. We don't have modern society without benzene. Just as an example, imagine plastics. Look around your room. Everything that's plastic, gone, because the foundational molecule is the benzene ring. A lot of medicines are made with benzene, including the famous aspirin, a lot of detergents. So we don't have modern society without it. But the benzene ring, when it's on its own, is known to be toxic and known to be a carcinogen. So because of that shape on the exterior of this ESS60 molecule, they assumed it would be toxic and they put it in a toxicity study. In that study, they gave, in this case, it was Wistar rats, water as the control group, olive oil as a kind of a secondary control group, and then olive oil with as much of the ESS60 molecule as we could get to dissolve in it. And instead of being toxic, the test subjects lived 90% longer than the control group. So the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history. It is peer-reviewed published research. I'll just share our most consistent testimonials that people take the product in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night. And you can imagine that study kind of changed our trajectory, my business partner and I, from being what I call happy-go-lucky carbon nanomaterial scientists, if there is such a thing, that's us, into getting into the health space. And so now, again, I'm here having this amazing conversation with you, and I'm sure you and your audience are going to pepper me with challenging questions. And I'm very lucky in what I get to do every day.
It's a fantastic story. It's a fantastic story. So, well, let's talk about the science. So that first discovery was made accidentally via rats. Have we seen this be reproduced, or what? Talk to us about what kind of studies and what kind of research has happened since on humans.
Yeah, so really, to my knowledge, other than anecdotes, only we are doing any sort of research. And I'll share with you, it's minimal research, and we actually have plans for some much bigger research, and I'll talk about that because we had a doctor approach us at A4M, the Longevity Fest, and shared some amazing stuff about hsCRP reduction, which is phenomenal, as you and your audience will know. The only study that I'm aware of on humans with any sort of kind of consistency is we actually did a sleep study. So I mentioned our most consistent testimonial is that people take it in the morning, they report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night. It's one of the first places, as we'll kind of tease mechanism of action. Hey, if you can just improve people's sleep, then you will improve their mental, physical, and emotional well-being. And so all the testimonials that we get on a regular basis could be just because of better sleep. I happened to be put in contact with a guy by the name of Benjamin Smar. He's an assistant professor at the University of California, San Diego. And he was, or is, I think he was, I don't think he is anymore, a consultant for Oura Ring, right? So a lot of you people, biohackers, have Oura Rings. They know that they're great sleep trackers. And because he was a consultant, he would have had access to the back end data of customers if they gave him authorization. And so we started this study. Well, that was pre-pandemic. And what happened is it turns out that the Oura Ring is pretty good at identifying COVID, right? It notices temperature fluctuations and can give you, hey, you should be, take it easy today kind of information. And so he totally disappeared, right? Like he was on press tours, and this ring can do all sorts of magic because it could identify COVID. But we continued that study, and that study was a crossover study and looked like this. We collected 10 days of data from people who had never tried the product. And then and I'll tell you what the data is here. And actually, I have a chart. I'll pull that up at some, well, let me pull that up now. It's not, I'll be honest, it's not well labeled. But here's the data that we were asking. One, how would you rate your sleep? How easy was it to fall asleep? How restless was your sleep? And then how did you feel in the morning? In the blue, you have 10 days of data, survey data collected before trying the product. In red, 10 days on the product. In yellow, 10 days off the product. And then back in green, 10 days on the product. One of the things to note is, by the way, we just have 10 people through this. We're about to launch a bunch more through. I want to get at least 25. But 100% of the participants reported improvements in sleep when they were taking the product. It's kind of interesting to see that, okay, blue is not taking product, red is taking product, and it typically tended to continue in a positive direction even when they stopped taking it. We believe that the molecule can stay resident for about 10 days. And so we were probably getting some of that effect as they were going into the 10 days not on the product. But universally, better sleep, more refreshing, falling asleep easier from people who were taking the product. So that is probably the only study, well, it's the only study I'm aware on humans. Now, they continue to release lots of studies on animals and all sorts of animal models. One of the recent ones is reducing inflammation in beagles. So I mentioned HSCRP. Actually, I want to kind of roll back a little bit and talk about my journey in terms of like understanding what the potential mechanisms of action are. First, we kind of hang our hat on sleep because that can always improve things, or improve everything actually. And then we started thinking, okay, these rats live 90% longer. How does the medical community think about aging, right? Not all of them, but a lot of them think of it in terms of inflammation and oxidation, right? And so we can check both of those boxes. And I have to be careful, so I'll kind of describe why I have to be careful and what we can say. In terms of an antioxidant, there's an ad hoc study out on the web that shows us to be 172 times more powerful than vitamin C, with a peer-reviewed published research paper showing us to be 125 times more powerful than vitamin C. So definitely checking that box. And we'll actually come back to antioxidant because we believe it's even more important when we start thinking about the potential impact in the mitochondria. When it comes to inflammation, you guys probably know this, the FDA has equated discussions of inflammation with discussions of the diseases of inflammation, which are also the diseases of aging. That is to say, arthritis, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, cancers. If I were to say our product reduces inflammation, chronic inflammation, the FDA hears me saying our product cures cancer, cures arthritis, cures cardiovascular disease, and you guys know we have so much more research to be able to say that. What the FDA will allow us to say is that we address inflammation caused by exercise, right? So we've all had a tough workout. We've all maybe run a half marathon. We've all walked farther than we normally do and felt that inflammation in our bodies the next day. And we can say that we address that type of inflammation. Now, I'm going to throw in the HSCRP component because I think this is pretty amazing. Dr. Young came to our booth at A4M. We had a good long conversation at Dave Asprey's event, Biohacker Conference, and he came up and I actually recorded this. Happy to share it with anyone in the audience who's interested. And I recorded it because it's so profound. He said, Chris, I don't care if you're male, female, pre-surgery, post-surgery, cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetic. Your product reduces HSCRP dramatically in 4 to 6 weeks. And he gave the example of a client who was with an HSCRP of 9, who in 6 weeks dropped it to 0.9. Again, HSCRP, high sensitivity C-reactive protein. It's a marker to describe inflammation. And one of the things that I learned subsequent to this, you guys may even know this already, is that when you're at 9, and I was having conversations with oncologists, that typically means we assume you have cancer until proven otherwise. otherwise. And so to drop that from 9 to 0.9 is a pretty remarkable effect. And actually, there's a lot of kind of cancer parallels. Let me go down that path real quick. So in the original study, right, the rats live 90% longer. A typical Wistar rat lives about 32 months and has a known amount of tumor mass in its body. The longer a Wistar rat lives, the more tumor mass it has in its body. Even though the MyVitalC rats lived out to 62 months, again, a full 90% extension, none of them had any tumors, right? So zero tumors. They should have had twice as much. Now, I tell that story to some people, and they're like, oh, cure for cancer. And the answer to that is no. No. Like, we are not. That doesn't even say that. What it does imply or potentiates that it has a reduction in tumor, right? An ability to prevent tumors. But we do know things as simple as good nutrition, good exercise, good sleep can be cancer preventatives. It throws that into that arena. The next thing that I'll add, now this is just a Petri dish study, right? And it's fascinating. Petri dish, lowest study. So just take it with a grain of salt. You take a Petri dish, you got healthy cells and you've got cancer cells. You introduce an anti-cancer agent, which is poison, right? The goal is to poison the cancer cells before the healthy cells. In the presence of the ESS60 molecule, adding that anti-cancer agent increases the efficacy of the poison against the cancer and shows protective effects for the healthy cells, right? So this is a pretty amazing kind of response. And we believe it's for kind of, this will be the final wrap up of what we think the mechanism of action is. We believe that it's because of the impact that it's having inside the mitochondria, right? So this is the BOSS theory. Buffering oxidative stress system.
Okay.
So we know from peer-reviewed published research that this ESS60 molecule gets into the mitochondria. Yeah. And we know from way back in the 90s when it was discovered that it can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles on the exterior of this cage. So I know you guys don't need the reminder, but it fits in the story. Mitochondria, the powerhouse of every cell, between 50 and 5,000 mitochondria in every cell, except for blood cells, which have 0, and brain and neurons, which have 2 million. That's how much energy our nervous system uses relative to our other systems. Just so we believe that this molecule gets into the mitochondria, right? Mitochondria has negative byproducts, these reactive oxygen species that can do damage if they're left to their own devices. And the reality is when mitochondria are overstressed, then those reactive oxygen species can run around and do damage. So let's kind of reverse a little bit. Internal to the mitochondria, you have 2 antioxidants to manage the reactive oxygen species. That's glutathione and melatonin. And remember, melatonin, the sleep hormone, our most consistent testimonial, is related to sleep. There's really nice parallels here. When a mitochondria gets overwhelmed, right, when it gets stressed, that can be that half marathon or full marathon. That can be, just too much sun. That can be smoke or smog. It can be just that stressful email that you got. When your mitochondria get overwhelmed, they produce more reactive oxygen species than the glutathione and melatonin can manage. And that's when they could run around and do damage. And that's where we think that this ESS60 molecule comes in and actually holds on to those reactive oxygen species. So they can't run around and do damage. And then when that mitochondria can replenish the glutathione or replenish the melatonin, then they can come in and attach themselves to them appropriately and manage them the right way. Now, here's the fun analogy. As with all amazing biological analogies, this one starts with Mardi Gras. It's the end of Mardi Gras, and you're on Bourbon Street, and you have these drunk reactive oxygen species running around, smashing up cars, smashing up windows. And you have the police, the New Orleans Police Department, the glutathione and melatonin, coming in, handcuffing themselves to these reactive oxygen species and getting them off of Bourbon Street. But what does the New Orleans Police Department do when they're overwhelmed? They take these reactive oxygen species and they stick them in a paddy wagon, right? They attach them to the ESS60 molecule. And then when they're in a position to replenish the glutathione, replenish the melatonin, then they can handcuff them and get them off of Bourbon Street. And that's why we say that this ESS60 molecule is the boss, buffering oxidative stress system.
So it's not that it is actually the antioxidant itself. It's like a temporary, like the paddy wagon. I was going to say a sponge. A paddy wagon is a much more fun on Bourbon Street. You know, a little bit more adventurous of an example, but yeah, so it's a temporary, it's not that it's actually doing that work. That's a really good and important distinction in terms of understanding the mechanism.
I think it's important for a couple of reasons, right? So one of them is that we have spikes of these stresses throughout our day, right? And if we think of these spikes of stresses as let's say that you've got a flow of water and that's hitting the dirt, and it'll start to create a hole in the dirt, right?
Right.
And if you stick a beaker between the water and the dirt, that beaker will slowly fill up. But if you don't do anything to manage that water, eventually it'll fill up, overflow, and start impinging on the dirt and causing damage again. But think about running a marathon. That's turning the faucet on and then off. Normally you would be impinging on the dirt, but with the ESS60 molecule, you're making sure that it doesn't get to the dirt, and then you can naturally manage it when you get off of that marathon, when you get off of that stress. And so that's really what the thought process is there.
I love it. This is so helpful. We've already had a question here, which was one of my next questions. So because I know people are wondering, how does this compare to C60? Is this what we see in C60 supplements?
So here's the first off, I could not be happier and more proud that you've heard of C60. Because what I can share is, if it weren't for me and my business partner, Robert, you would have never heard of C60, right? So we're the oldest and longest manufacturers of the molecule on the planet. And when companies start thinking about or saying that C60 has health benefits, it's because of this one study. It's called the Bhatti study out of the University of Paris. Our lab provided the material, and our lab is actually mentioned in that original study. So we're like the OG. So I'm super proud that you've heard of C60. We actually, I mean, I'll go back and tell a little bit. If I get off track here, jump in. So when that original study came out, where the Wistar rats live 90% longer, we started getting, that was mid-2012, about mid-2013, we start getting these calls from these crazy, wacky people called biohackers, right? And I can say that now because I am a biohacker. And they were like, hey, how much of this stuff should I take? And my business partner and I were conservative nanomaterial scientists. And what we heard was, hey, Chris, how much of that stuff that you sell to research institutions around the world to put into ink, batteries, tires, and photocells, how much should I be consuming on a daily basis? And we thought zero. So we actually added not for human consumption to our labeling in mid-2013. So think about that. From 1991, when we start manufacturing it, all the way to mid-2013, we finally have to add not for human consumption to the labeling.
Can I ask, how did they hear about this? Is it just because of that study? This is in true biohacker style, discover some sort of research done on something that's going into batteries and ink, and is like, that sounds great. And is that literally how it happened?
Yeah. Rats live longer, awesome. Must consume product. like it's from here to there. Now, we did add for not for human consumption to the labeling, but the literature was clear, including this particular study where the rats live 90% longer. Like, the molecule was safe. We're just conservative scientists. Right. Who we're just uncomfortable. Again, when you say inks, batteries, tires, photocells, like you just don't leap to how much you should consume. And then this gets crazier, right? So we start getting phone calls, and it's people saying, hey, my knee pain is gone. And we're like, you mean the knee pain of your rat, right? Because it literally says not for human consumption on the labeling. And they're like, yeah, my rat. So if my rat weighs 275 pounds and does HIIT training on Tuesdays and Thursdays, how much should my rat be taking? And so like, this throws us into a situation where we're like, should we be in this market? My business partner and I would get together about every quarter, about every 3 months, and we're like, do we want to get into the supplement industry? And the reality is, we didn't. Like, we were uncomfortable with it, because supplements, we'll say, are a challenging industry, right? Or a challenged industry. And you think about what we were doing. We're selling this black powder to research institutions around the world. When they received it, they would give it to a grad student or a research associate who would test it and make sure we shipped them what we promised them. And that is not how, I don't know if you know, that is not how supplements work.
Sadly, right? I do know. Or luckily, I don't know which is which, but yeah.
People don't, you're not even counting the tablets. Like the most rudimentary thing that you could do to a bottle of something that arrived at your house would be to count the tablets and say, they said 120, did I get 120? That's not even happening, right? So quarter after quarter, we're like, we don't want to get into this industry. And then I actually found a peer-reviewed published research paper that showed that 50% of the supplements this group had purchased on the market did not have in them what they said they had in them. And so this just reinforced, we don't want to get into this industry. Finally, at the latter part of 2017, a guy with a big YouTube following starts talking about all the benefits he's getting taking it on a daily basis. And our phone went from ringing 2 to 3 times a week to 10 times a day, right? So now, a couple of things. It's a bigger entrepreneurial opportunity than we realized. 2, more people are going to be taking this than we ever realized, ever thought was possible. And if you look back to that paper, it meant that people were going to come into the space and they're going to deliver exactly what you would find in the supplement industry already, which is 50% of the supplements on the market don't have in them what they say they have in them. And we've done tests. It happened a lot faster than we thought it would. So we realized that we're in this unique position. At this point, we've worked with the molecule for 34 years. We're in a unique position with the equipment, with the knowledge. We really need to come into the market and make sure that there's a product that's out there that's safe. And that's part of the reason that we came up with ESS60, because we tested 22 of the products in the C60 space, and we felt that if I'm going to come on to a show like yours, where actually, some of your audience has certainly heard of it, I just want to keep them in some environment that's safe. And for sure, it's good for business to have an ingredient that has a trademark. That wasn't what drove us. What really drove us is I don't want people going and getting 50% of the products that they purchase, not having in them what they say they have in them. So just real quick, comes to 2018, we decide we're going to get into the industry. We ask ourselves 2 questions. The first is a moral question. Are we comfortable selling it, right? Because this is a very new molecule. By the way, it's naturally occurring. We could talk about that, but it's a new molecule. I take it. My wife takes it. Everybody on our team takes it. By the way, it's not a requirement to work on our team that you take the product. They just have access to the research. They hear the testimonials, so everybody on our team takes it. Yeah. And then the next one is the FDA and the FTC, the legal requirements. You got to cross the T's, you got to dot the I's, and that's when we really, in 2018, started bringing this product to market.
So I have some follow-up questions. This is such a fascinating story, and I really do appreciate, because anyone on this, listening live certainly, and listening to the recording, as clinicians, it is chaos out there with supplements, and we work with supplements extensively. So we're super picky about which ones we work with. And knowing that there is really robust and rigorous testing behind anything we recommend is so important when we're making these recommendations to clients who put their trust and their health in our hands, right? So it's a really, really big deal. And we really value companies like yours who do that extra step and are so keen with us. I want to ask, you mentioned naturally occurring. So where does this molecule come from? Is it, animal in origin? Where does it come from? Well, let's just start there. Where does it come from?
So just everybody has been exposed to this molecule. If you collect the soot from a candle, right, and you usually do that by putting a cold steel plate over a candle, you'll get that super dark soot. That super dark soot has parts per million or parts per billion of the ESS60 molecule in it, right? So we have all literally been exposed to it, just not very much of it. So in order to manufacture it, so the product is not crazy expensive, it's also not inexpensive. And part of the reason is, in order to make quantities that you could actually utilize in a supplement, you have to vaporize graphite in an inert environment at a reduced atmosphere. So what that means is there can be no oxygen. That will ruin the reaction. It has to be on a slight vacuum, so there's a vacuum equipment. And graphite turns out to be one of the hardest materials on the planet to vaporize. You actually need local temperatures of the sun to vaporize graphite. So there's actually a sight glass. If you don't use welder's goggles, you will burn out your retina. And if you let that sun shine on you, you will get a sunburn. It's local temperatures of the sun to vaporize this graphite. And then the process is actually laborious after that. If you're lucky, you get about 10% of material that is useful. So a bunch of 90% amorphous carbon garbage that you've got to separate from it, and then you start isolating down to the molecule and then converting that into ESS60, which we say is safe for humans and pets.
So just to be clear, don't lick your candle soot. Just needed to say it in case. You never know, right? You just never know. Biohackers, right? Like they'll do anything.
Well, there's also another component here for that, which is if you have a pile of this, and it's carbon, right? So it's a black powder. It's a crystalline powder, like you would have a sugar crystals or salt crystals. It's a crystalline powder. You can consume that, but it's not water soluble. So you would just excrete it out. It's not bioavailable in the crystalline powder form. One of the purposes, and we sell it in olive oil, avocado oil, and MCT oil. One of the purposes is so that you break down those crystals, you dissolve those crystals, and you end up with individual ESS60 molecules floating around, which are clearly, just from a surface area perspective, significantly, almost infinitely more bioavailable. Just a fun little fact. One drop of our product has more than 465 times as many molecules in it, one drop, as many molecules as you have cells in your body. So one drop, more molecules than you have, 400 times more than you have cells in your body. So super small molecule. And that's kind of necessary. That kind of ratio is necessary if we're thinking about getting into the mitochondria and having a positive impact at the mitochondrial level. I love supplements are often, and this is rightfully so, hey, we're amazing. We operate at the cellular level. We understand, our current understanding through this BOSS theory is that we're operating at the subcellular level.
Interesting. So thinking about the fact that it is delivered in oil and fats, do you know if there is a bioavailability issue for somebody who has really compromised fat digestion?
That's a great question. We don't have any feedback of people with fat digestion problems not kind of reporting benefits. Okay. But you may have access to people that would be very interesting to get some product to and get some feedback on.
Well, I was already, when you say that, you lead into something I'd made note of when you were talking earlier. Just noting that we have a pool of practitioners here, many of whom are running blood work. And I think it would be very interesting. And I know that to call something formal research there's a whole world of steps that you've got to go through. So I'm not thinking necessarily of that. But could our community be of support to you if, for example, a practitioner runs labs and they see very, very elevated HSCRP, and one of the core strategies that they use is to bring in your product and retests in 3 months and see what happens? The challenge is that we're always doing a bunch of things at the same time. So that's the only, but if that was like the only thing brought in intentionally to address inflammation specifically, and maybe the rule is no other anti-inflammatories in the protocol. I don't know. I'm kind of riffing out loud here. Yeah. But I think it would be, I'm just wondering how we can support you and help to, I'm always, experimenting with these kinds of things, myself personally, and just seeing, but of course I'm an N of one, and, I'm not actively seeing clients right now. So for those who are, is there, maybe at the end we can talk about how they can, if they want to reach out to you and let you know, like, how do they kind of report in findings, and how can they try this stuff with clients and, see the efficacy in a way that's actually helpful? We would be very excited to do that. My current goal is an ad hoc study of about 20 people, right? We would want to be looking for somebody who's a little bit high in HSCRP or a lot high, right? And then kind of hopefully isolate the protocol. And in your case, maybe they've already tried a bunch of stuff and it really hasn't moved the needle. That's what Dr. Young shared with us. And then get them on for like 4 to 6 weeks and retest. And yes, I want to get 20 people through that. Once that's done, we actually have an organization that we can lean on to get a placebo-controlled double-blind study done. That'd be amazing. While we're talking about that, and I don't know if you're not comfortable answering this question, feel free to say like not comfortable answering, but this is a question I'm always wondering about, right? You see pharma and the bucket loads of money that goes into the research for these these studies, right? And it is, I'm always curious, like the funding for these types of things, like I mean, I know you guys are successful, but doesn't mean you have like limitless pockets. And I always feel like supplements, the supplement industry is chaos, as we've already talked about. And it also kind of feels like it's set up for chaos because you don't necessarily, I mean, in some cases you do have big pockets of money that are going to invest in certain things. But it's not in the same way as like pharma does. And then it gets critiqued because it's not being held to the same standards. And I know I always kind of think, well, like who's paying for it? What do you expect? Like, this is a tall order. It's a little bit like, some farmers are just not able to maintain organic certification because it's just a freaking expensive process, right? And that doesn't mean that they're not actually having great standards. So as somebody who's in the business, like, how do you even think about that?
Well, I think one of them is supplements in general, right? So I think this is what you and your practitioners work hard is to find the supplement that doesn't fit what I'm about to describe, right? The supplement company, which is a lot of supplement companies are afraid to do research, right? Because they've got a bunch of great anecdotes and they're like, we're selling on this. And if we go and do the research and the research shows the wrong thing, then we can't sell this thing anymore, right?
Interesting.
And, heaven forbid it get published and now we can't sell it. I would rather understand that this does. Remember, I didn't make this, right? I didn't go back in my lab and solve it. I know how to solve HSCRP. Like, I'm just as curious as everybody who's out there. I also have a vested interest in this, right? It's a product that I sell for my company. But I would rather know this doesn't work and go on to the next phase of my life than to just be here and sit idle with my head in the sand and say, well, we got some good testimonials and theories, so we're just going to keep selling. So I think that's one of the things that is why supplements get a bad name. Most supplement companies do not do any research or publish. We just published actually last May with the original researcher from the Paris Bhatti study. So his name is Dr. Fatih Musa. It's called the Bhatti study because the grad student is on the front of the paper, but the lead researcher behind it is Dr. Fatih Musa, and we just published a paper with him back in May. So not only are we continuing to do research, we're continuing to publish it. The reason big pharma doesn't come in is because there's no way to protect it, right? There's no intellectual property. The molecule is out in the open, and they really want to have protections and guarantees. Although they will step out there, right? Like I can remember some huge pharmaceutical company stepped in and kind of purchased the rights to resveratrol after Dr. David Sinclair started talking about them. It didn't really go anywhere, but like they were willing to go into that space, and I think that molecule was not it did not have the position for intellectual property, so they couldn't have protected it. So they will do those types of things, and we're open to collaborating.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. What have we? Well, let's talk about clinician audience. When should they be thinking about recommending this to a client? Are there any? I mean, I know, it would be easy to say, well, all of us want to live longer, so everyone should be on it. But let's get really granular and specific. Like so they're seeing really elevated HSCRP on a lab. You've got a practitioner out there who's getting great results with it. That would make sense that you would be thinking about bringing this in. Are there other things, even though we're just in sort of anecdotes and testimonials, are there certain places where you're hearing the best results where they should be really thinking like, okay, I'm seeing this client with this presentation. I really should be thinking about bringing this in.
Yeah, I think so we're going to do a study on HSCRP. We're looking at interleukin-6, right? That's another inflammatory marker. TNF alpha. Those tests are significantly more expensive, right? So those would be like after round 2 or 3. I'm glad you mentioned that. Just everybody wants to live longer, right? Because we're never going to do a human longevity study on this. If humans live 90% longer, the average human will live to 182. That's not I'm sorry,
It's really long.
152. That's not the oldest human. There's a bell curve. That's the average human, right? So well into the 200s. So that's a good reason. I'll share this one anecdote, this one testimonial. So I was at the office. I try very hard not to work on Saturdays and Sundays, right? That's family time. But I happened to be here on a Saturday. I saw somebody come and they knocked on the door. I went and answered it. It felt very like clandestine. Do you have any ESS60? I was like, yes, I do have ESS60. Come in. And then I had to figure out how to run his credit card through the website because we're not a point of sale system. So I remembered him, and about 3 months later, he was in the lobby with Cassandra. She was taking care of him. And I was like, oh, this is early on. Like, we didn't have that many testimonials. Let me get this guy will have an amazing testimonial, because Cassandra shared this was his third purchase. And at the time we were running some sort of 3-bottle special, and he was buying 3 bottles. Like, this is a guy who clearly sees the advantage. So I walked up to him and was like, hey, what have you noticed? And it was kind of crazy. It was like, well, he felt bad. I haven't really noticed anything. And in my head, I'm like, well, there is the longevity aspect that you pointed out. Like, it's a good idea, I think. And then he goes, but does it help, right? And we have to be really careful. But he's like pointing at his knuckles. Does it help? I was like, oh yeah, we definitely have some testimonials about that. And he goes, well, I feel a lot better. And I used to have this click, click, click in my knee, and that's gone. And I was like, well, it's a shame you haven't noticed anything. And he goes, I'm about to go jogging. I haven't jogged in years, and I'm about to go jogging. I don't remember if it was like his 3rd, 5th, 7th time, but he was jogging again. And then he finally said, Chris, I have to share with you, I have less stress at work. Let me be clear. It's the same job. It's the same people. It's the same stress. I just feel less stress at work. And that is actually something, again, if you think about 2 million mitochondria in a brain cell, it is something that we get regularly. I don't think I've done a good job of answering your question. I can say we don't have any counterindications, right? So we don't have any situations. You still want to have a conversation with your healthcare provider, but we don't have counterindications of any sort of medications or any sort of supplements.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. And so when you're looking at we have people ask, hey, does it help with this? And my honest answer is, if we're addressing mitochondrial health, right? Yeah. And really just reducing the negative impact of mitochondria or stressed mitochondria, then we are going to have head-to-toe testimonials. And we do have head-to-toe testimonials.
Well, if you're addressing mitochondrial health and inflammation and oxidative stress. The Clinician's Corner podcast is sponsored by Restorative Wellness Solutions, the premier clinical training program for health practitioners who want to learn how to finally get to the root source of their clients' health concerns and help them reverse complex health challenges and chronic illness. You can't afford to keep guessing. Your clients can't afford it either. Today's clients are sicker than ever before. Their health histories are more complex than ever before. And you simply can't deliver the results they crave or build the practice you desire without the right clinical skills. Enter Restorative Wellness Solutions' foundational course, Mastering the Art and Science of Gastrointestinal Healing, our clinically proven, systematic approach to restoring balance within the body that has helped over 1,000 practitioners transform their clients' lives, grow their business, and change the way health is delivered. In less than 12 weeks, you'll develop the clinical skills and confidence you need to help your clients feel better, faster. Learn how to work with advanced lab testing to identify food sensitivities and imbalances within the gut. Craft custom targeted protocols that truly resolve your clients' gut issues, and work safely and effectively with supplements to deliver consistently life-changing results. Visit masterguthealing.com to apply today. It's kind of the triple hit, right? Like, you're doing a lot. There's really not a part of the physiology you're not touching. So would you say, like, if you to kind of frame it, so there's no contraindications, that's really good to know. We know that there's not any specific contraindications, but have you seen kind of like a suite of supports? Like if you had, somebody who is taking this product alongside fill in the blank A and fill in the blank B, it's like, well, that sort of suite, they really complement each other well, they really support each other. Or have you, I know that you also, you're focusing on what your providing. But
Well, and I just had a conversation about hydrogen water earlier today, right?
Okay.
And so hydrogen tends to be this selective antioxidant. And we actually don't think we're in a sense a selective antioxidant. We believe we're a selective buffer, right? Oxidation buffer
yeah,
system.
it's very different.
Right. And so it's a very unique mechanism of action. So I think hydrogen is something that I think that are good parallels. Let me show. So let's talk about pushing mitochondrial function at the extreme level, right?
Yeah.
So one of the guys that loves our product, he actually will work booths with us, is a guy by the name of Anthony Kunkel. He's a two-time U.S. ultra running champion. He won a U.S. championship at 50 miles and at 100 miles, which is 62. He's currently working towards getting a world record at 100 miles, and he's clocking like 200 miles per week. If there's a person who's stressing their mitochondria, of course he's in great shape, right? So you start to stress your mitochondria less as it gets more capable, but we can all agree he's really stressing his mitochondria. The way he describes it, right? So you often think in terms of speeding exercise recovery, right?
Yeah.
He describes it. My first conversation with him was amazing because he said, listen, I started taking one serving of your product, didn't really notice anything. Like all good biohackers, he tripled it and then was like, wow, this could be the difference between somebody having a running career and somebody having a running hobby.
Interesting.
And he said, I don't believe that it speeds recovery, right? Because speeding recovery would say, after I go and do a 30-mile run, it takes me 11 days to recover. And with this product, it's 5 days. The way he says it I believe it prevents damage in the first place. Because on the last 5 miles of a 50-mile run, again, a phrase you don't hear very often, where strength and stability were previously a problem, they are no longer a problem. And I think that goes to, as you're stressing these mitochondria, right? So he's stressing them on his training, but he's also doing like red light therapy. I don't know if he's doing hydrogen, but he's a biohacker who's honed in on so many good things so that after he comes off of the stress-inducing piece of his day, he actually can get to homeostasis. And then, again, that glutathione and melatonin can handle or manage those reactive oxygen species without doing the damage that they would normally do.
That makes a lot of sense when you describe it as that kind of buffer. I think that's key. And I see Sid here has a question about how this compares to urolithin A, which is another fantastic mitochondrial support, but entirely different mechanism, right? Where that is speeding up the mitophagy. And so really helping with that end process. I mean, honestly, I'm just thinking here, Sid's question along with your answer, and then thinking about the glutathione. I feel like, well, if you've got, I firmly believe everybody should be taking glutathione or NAC, depending on what you tolerate better and gets you better results. But you combine that with your product and urolithin A, and you've got some pretty full on support right there. That would be a pretty nice triple hit. So that
to add urolithin A back, I've used it before. Back on, I'm really, one of the things that I think as you get older. So I'm 55. I'm at the age where I need to be aware, thinking about preparing whatever for sarcopenia, right? And as you go down that path, like you want to have muscle mass early. Which I'm not 100% convinced. If you just keep training through things, then you can maintain that muscle mass. I don't think that the drop off, which is almost universal, is necessary if you're actually working through things, right? If you're actually lifting heavy weights and doing heavy things. But I think urolithin A has some track record of actually increasing muscle synthesis with little or no effort. And
the research is mind-boggling. It is amazing. They've showed. We had Jennifer, who leads research, or she's a clinical nutritionist with Timeline. We had her come on and she shared a study done, and I'm going to probably botch it, but she shared a study done with elderly population. I believe it was 80-year-olds, and they had sedentary and then active, like still running half marathon type of active, very active. And they did a test of mitochondrial, I don't remember what they specifically tested, mitochondrial function, I think. But they did it. It was muscle biopsy, so like gold standard. And then the only intervention they did was adding the urolithin A. And then they retested. They did not have those non-exercisers start exercising. And at the end, basically the muscle biopsy of the non-exercisers looked the same as the exercisers, with the only intervention being the urolithin A. I was like, I mean, I have not missed a day since I heard that statistic. Let me tell you that, especially as I was recovering from a knee injury and not nearly able to do my normal activity. So I think that these things can really complement each other in a very, very profound and powerful way. So I love this. I want to talk about dosing. You mentioned that, with that athlete and then the, tripling the dose. What do you recommend in terms of dosing? I know you'll have what's kind of on the package. Is there dosing strategies? Should people like titrate in nice and slowly because it's so effective that it can cause some kind of Herx response or some kind of side effect? Or can people just like go for it? And then also acute versus kind of chronic and maintenance? Do you have different strategies for that?
Yeah, so I think first is our general recommendation is 1 teaspoon a day, right? So 5 mils a day. I tend to take more. I have access, so I'll just share my routine. We have an MCT product. We have an olive oil, an avocado, and an MCT product. I do kind of a bulletproof coffee thing. I put about 1.5 teaspoons of our MCT product in coffee while that's blending, right? So I can emulsify it. I take 1.5 teaspoons of our olive oil product. That's my typical daily routine. If I've got a stress day where I'm, back-to-back podcasts or meetings or whatever, I might end up taking another dose. And I can share, in 2018, when we started bringing this to market, it wasn't part of my coffee routine. And so I could find I'd hit like 2 o'clock, you hit that wall where I was like, maybe I need a nap, maybe I need a 3rd cup of coffee or something. And I could always look back and I hadn't taken the product that morning. Right. Now that it's part of my routine, I do still drink coffee. I'm down to 1 cup a day, which I don't always finish. And sometimes I don't like to be wasteful. So I'm drinking the last little bit. Certainly don't need coffee anymore. I've certainly felt like I needed coffee in the past. And in fact, some people ask how quickly this, what kind of response might you see? And I'll give you the 2 extremes. One is I got a video testimonial from a lady. She took the product in the morning and then created the video that night and shared, hey, I didn't finish my cup of coffee today, right? And if you're a coffee consumer, and you notice that's a big deal. So that was same day impact. And then I'll share this one too. This includes one of the worst testimonials about a supplement ever, so it's fun to share. So our largest distributor here in Houston is a lady named Gwen. She's kind of in the health practitioner space. And she originally ordered the product for her dog with no intention of taking it. And she has a Pekingese. And she noticed such a profound difference in her dog that she was like, I probably should start taking this. One of the things that I love about pet testimonials, and we have quite a few, is that there's no placebo effect with pets, right? They're ironically smart enough to know that you put the dropper, and so they should act more like a puppy that day. She starts taking it, and I recorded a video with her, and she said, at the 3-month mark, if you had asked me, have I noticed anything? My initial response would have been no. But then I started taking stock of my life, and I realized I was working later. I realized that I was getting up earlier. I was never a morning person. And here we go, the worst testimony about a supplement ever. I cleaned my garage. Right. We don't use that in any marketing material. But that's a Herculean job, right? It takes energy, it takes time. Sometimes maybe there's emotional baggage out there. So how to handle that? That's kind of that runs the span. Now, 1 teaspoon per day is typical. We do have people when they are, experiencing challenges who will take more. If you're not used to taking 1 teaspoon a day of oil, you can certainly get a little bit of loose stool. It's not diarrhea, but it's a little bit of loose stool, and that's for a day, 2, maybe 3 tops. And then if you're taking more, same kind of scenario. Right. But some people will ask, do we have any ideas about toxicity? We believe that the toxicity of our product is the same as the toxicity of olive oil. which involves drowning. Because your
Right.
body will just start throwing up the oil. Like at some point,
Right.
your body's like, we got enough oil. I don't know if that's called oil toxicity or just called your
Right.
stomach going, I don't want any more.
Right.
But in terms of toxicity, we don't believe that there's any.
Okay. So you can't have that upper limit unless you barf.
Yeah.
How long does it take typically for people to feel results? Is this something that they're going to be feeling right away? Give it a few weeks?
I'll share this. I've been around people, and I am not one, who are really intuitive, right?
Yeah.
And really aware, like the lady who noticed that she didn't finish her cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I like to think I'm like that. I think the reality is I'm not, and I have some examples that I'm not like that. Those really intuitive people can take it and go like, wow, I noticed this difference. Like I just notice it within 15 minutes.
Yeah.
The other end of the coin is if you think about sleep, right? If I just improve your mitochondria, how is that going to manifest in your daily life? Well, let's think about it in terms of sleep. If we're all good biohackers, we're going to bed at exactly the same time and waking up at exactly the same time. I'm not sure we're all good biohackers. I think we tend to get 1 hour more or 1 hour less of sleep per night. You have a little one running around. They've got projects that are magically due tomorrow. Like, like this is a thing. And so if you start getting consistently that extra hour of sleep, would you even know to attribute it to,
Right.
in this case, MyVitalC? Like, would you even know to attribute it to that? Or if it's the same amount of sleep, but you're just sleeping better, you're getting more sleep out of it, then, would you really notice? And I always remember there's a lady kind of next door. I ended up giving her some products. She was talking about some oncology situation she was going through, and gave her some product, revisited her in like 10, 15 days. So it was like, hey, have you noticed anything? And again, she felt so bad to share with me that she hadn't noticed anything. And again, I didn't invent it, so I'm okay. I'm collecting more data.
Right.
But then I asked her, hey, how's your sleep? And her eyes got like Bambi big. She's like, oh, I've been waking up at 5:30 every morning. But she couldn't equate the product that I had given her to the fact that she was waking up earlier, and she's ex-military, so that's the time she's supposed to be getting up anyway. So I think it depends. We do have some numbers of customers who are like, I haven't really noticed anything. They stop taking it, and then they notice. I'll share this. My business coach describes the product this way. I used to need an alarm clock to wake up for 50 years. When I started taking the product regularly, I wake up before the alarm clock, right? And this is a business coach, so he's networking, out having dinners and wines and whatever, waking up before the alarm clock. And he shares that if he's off the product for 10 days, mostly because I haven't gotten it over to him, then he'll start to use the alarm clock again.
Wow. That's a powerful testimonial right there. I will share that I've played around extensively with this, and I had also, it's a little bit of the universe intervening on our behalf for both of us, in that I had played around with another C60 product. I'm not going to name names, but had not really like noticed much with the other one, but definitely noticed. I mean, I take a lot of stuff already, so I wasn't like in a place where I was like, hurt, like, you know what I mean? I already take a lot of stuff, but definitely noticed it felt really good in my body. And definitely didn't feel, I wish I was, I can't remember. I don't know if I was taking it when I did my 50 miler for my birthday last year. I honestly can't remember. My supplement stack was so gigantic. I might have, but I wasn't like thinking about it specifically. But when you're talking about that runner, I'm like, oh man, I should have been documenting that more. I will say, I might have been. I should ask you. You know what? It's interesting that as you say this, because I very well might have been. I did. I don't know. Anyways, what I will say is that I've never felt, I ran that 50 miler. I know that I wasn't taking it for my last marathons because I didn't know about you and this until sort of early last year, I think is when I found out about you. And then, so actually the timing would line up. I can't say with complete confidence, but I say with confidence, but not with complete certainty. Let's say that. Because I will tell you in that run, I was like, the next day, I was like, I don't feel like that happened, which is weird because I've never run 50 miles in my life. And the next day because you see me after any marathon, I'm like limping, like I'm doing the back, going down the stairs backwards, hanging onto the railing, like terrified to sit on the toilet because getting down and standing up is so excruciating. And I had none of that. Like the next day I was hopping around going, I kind of feel like I should go for a run, but I'm probably not going to because I just ran 50 miles and that seems like not something you should do. I don't know.
Yeah, so I'll share. So Anthony Kunkel sent me a message through IG, and one of the beautiful things about Anthony is super analytical, right? Like he at one point said, "Hey, I think this might be like a crutch and maybe weakening other pieces of my system, and so I'm going to go off of it for a while," right? Like he's that analytical about his biohacking approaches. So he sends it, and just kind of bragging for me or whatever. He sends the note, and he's like, "Listen, I did 30 miles. When I went to bed, I was pretty wrecked. When I got up in the middle of the night to use the restroom, I still felt it. When I got up in the morning, I was ready to start training again." And this is, if you're managing, if you're reducing the negative impact of those reactive oxygen species and stressed mitochondria, it just makes sense that you're not doing the damage to begin with.
Awesome. So talk to us about how these folks can start working with it with their clients. I know you have a couple of different special offers here. You have this 18 tips by 55 experts, which I'll put the link to that in, but you also have $15 off the initial order.
Yeah, so the tips, that link is great. I ended up interviewing 55 experts in longevity, including people you'll know, Dave Asprey, Ben Greenfield, Stephen Gundry. And so those are tips that I've kind of aggregated from all of the experts that I interviewed. So that was that's some fantastic stuff. We made a particular URL for your audience.
You did. Awesome.
MyVitalC.com/RWS. So MyVitalC.com/RWS. On that page, there's a $15 off coupon just for your audience. So you need to go to that page to get that coupon.
Awesome.
Well, I'll share a couple things on that page. First is, like I mentioned, we have an olive oil product, an avocado product, and an MCT product.
Yeah.
When people ask me which one should you try, we always recommend the olive oil product for two reasons. The first is we're a science-based organization. All the research is in the ESS60 molecule in olive oil.
Okay.
The next is it's the highest concentration of the ESS60 molecule. So you get about 0.8 milligrams per milliliter in olive oil, 0.6 in avocado oil, and 0.3 in MCT oil. So
that's very interesting to note. So dosing would be very, very important. Great. Thank you.
And I can share, so Anthony Kunkel uses the MCT product, right, in the early parts of his training block. So he's trying to accomplish a couple things. One, he doesn't need the benefits of ESS60 as much because he's not training as hard, but also MCT is good for hunger suppression. And, as a runner who's about to run 100 miles, like you're trying to get every ounce of everything off of you that you can. And so, managing hunger is a key thing. And then he'll ramp up into the olive oil product as he gets closer to the actual race.
Awesome.
A couple other things. If you go on subscription, we have a 25% discount for subscription. So even if you just want to test the product out, go ahead and go on subscription. Our customer service team has 1,000 5-star reviews. They are not trained to talk you out of canceling your subscription. Go ahead and get on subscription, and then you can cancel it at any time via email, phone call, however. Smoke signals. It's harder, but
do you have any like practitioner account options or anything like that if folks wanted to sign up with you guys, either wholesale or drop ship to clients?
Absolutely. So we have a wholesale and an affiliate account. So both, you could send them using your link and you would get, that works 15% of that initial sale, and then 5% ongoing. And then in terms of wholesale accounts, depending on volume, we can get you to a 50% margin. So, and it's a reasonable volume. It's not, truckloads. It's just
not 500 or something. Yeah.
And so there's a link, and I'll make sure to share it with your team to get it into the notes. Excellent. For that. It's called an application. It's really a formality to get you in our system and get the data to you in terms of where the price breaks are with wholesale. We're also doing more practitioner accounts. We are currently on Get Healthy. I don't know if you're familiar.
You are on Get Healthy? Okay.
Yep. And we are working on full script, but we actually need some practitioners to help us by filling out a form.
We're requesting? Okay.
by request.
Okay, everybody, you heard, go request the product. We've helped with that with other companies. So go everybody and request this go through Fullscript. Most of our folks use Fullscript. So yes.
I'm gonna, if this works, I'm gonna post this in the messages. I think it's gonna work. That is.
Oh, there you go. There's a form.
Very cool.
Julie, if you could grab that form, let's make sure we get that in the show notes as well, please. Can we do that? Is that okay if we post it in the show notes?
Of course. Yes, please.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay, we'll post it in the show notes as well. Yes, everyone, I love it when everything can come from the same place. So Fullscript seems to be kind of dominating the market right now. So that would be awesome if everyone could go and request that there.
And we have the URL for your audience.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
And again, there's a $15 off coupon when they go there.
Awesome.
I'm going to add one more thing because I'm pretty proud of this. So I wrote the book, Live Longer and Better. It's about the discovery of the molecule, its evolution into the health space, and then some longevity learnings that have happened along the way. The book is available on Amazon. It's $20 on Amazon. If you go to, a direct link won't be on your link, but go to that link and then use the menu structure and you can find the book. It's $20 on our site also. I don't care where you buy it from. But if you buy it on our site, there's a charity piece where if you ask for a signature, I'll sign the book for you. Actually, I did that today. I love it when I get to do that. It's at $10 extra, but that full $10 goes to Operation Underground Railroad. I don't know if you remember the movie The Sound of Freedom, a great, horrible movie about child sex trafficking. So it was a great movie about a horrible topic. That movie is about the organization Operation Underground Railroad. I happened to see him speak the week that movie was coming out. And so the full $10 gets donated to Operation Underground.
That's wonderful. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Well, that is definitely a cause worth supporting. So, go get the book as well. That's awesome.
I'm going to add one other thing. So if you're coming on board, kind of wholesale affiliate, we're happy to hop on calls. We don't have it working yet, but we'll make it work. Like literally, if somebody in your audience was like, I need to talk to you tomorrow on some sort of webinar, we would figure out how to make that happen so that we can do training. Like, what can you say? What do you say? Like, how do we explain the technology? Is the Mardi Gras analogy the right analogy? Maybe I've had one person say like, we should do a different analogy. I'm open to that, and also here to help train so that people can understand. And also anybody who is looking at a client with a high HSCRP that's just not moving, like, let's talk. We can provide product for that.
Fantastic. Is there a contact that people should use? We've got website. We're going to throw on your socials, but is there a contact that people should use if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah. Well, if they just go to the website and fill out the contact us form, that'll get to me.
Perfect.
My team's pretty good about managing what they can and then sending to me what needs to be sent to me. And if honestly, we've had people who really didn't need me, but insisted on me, and I've hopped on the phone with them. So I'm happy to do that.
Well, you've been so generous with your time and super. This is such a fantastic interview. Oh, wait, I'll be remiss if I forget to ask this question. Is your product available only in the US, or is there international shipping at all?
International shipping. We actually have an NPN number so we can get it into Canada in bulk, which is pretty exciting. We're struggling with Amazon in Canada right now. We think we'll have that fixed in the next month or so, but we can definitely ship into Canada and have always shipped into Canada.
Australia and New Zealand? We just have a lot of folks there.
New Zealand.
Awesome.
And shipping into the UK also.
Brilliant. Excellent.
We actually have it in Amazon in Australia. And so we can drop ship from their facility into Australia.
Oh, so good. Awesome. We have Canadian on the call right now, so that's excellent. Hey, Zoe. Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I'm actually just going to throw your social links in the chat as well, so people who are here live can go follow you. And of course, this will come out, not sure when, 2-3 months. But when this comes out, we will make sure all of this is out there in the show notes. Thank you so much. You are a wealth of information and so much fun to talk to. I love the stories. And thank you for creating such a high integrity product. And we're going to be super excited to hear about the research as it unfolds. So please keep us posted.
Thank you so much. I know, you hold your audience near and dear to your heart. And so the fact that I got past the filter means a lot to me. And I'm sure we'll see each other at events, and, I'm here in any capacity that I can help. I'd love to. I actually did an introduction. Hopefully that pans out. I think that's pretty
wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that. Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining live, and thank you for listening. Those listening, have a wonderful rest of your day.